I'll present myself. So I'm Sophie. I'm Vice President of Operations at RECYC-Québec. For those of you who don't know us, we're a government agency. We report to the Minister of Environment, and circular economy has been in our mission since 2015. So we've been working on a lot of things for a few years. And I just wanted to share a few of our actions towards a circular economy. So one of the things we did in Quebec is measure, so to know how we perform and compare. So Matthew from Circular Economy was here this morning. We worked with Circle Economy to do a circularity gap report for Quebec. It was important for us to have a baseline indicator of where we were at to know where we should go. So we wanted also to compare ourselves with other countries and regions. So that's why we work with circular economy, Circle Economy. And also for us, this process was a way of engaging stakeholders and mobilize our ecosystem, and also to identify, strategies for the future. So Circle Economy, we work with them. You've seen they did a circularity gap report for the world, for many countries. We still are really proud to be the first region to do a circularity gap report, but also the first in France and the first in North America. So that's pretty great. I hope we see other, thank you. I hope we see other similar exercise in other provinces so we can compare and see how we can align also our next steps. So the basic result was the Quebec's economy is 3.5 circular. So it can be, it really relates to our economy based on extraction and transformation of resource. So this is not, we were not really surprised by the result, but we really were looking forward to see how we can improve that result. So one of the things also we learned, and that's really important for us, RECYC-Québec, because we are moving more and more towards source reduction instead of recycling, which is really important. So we found out that we consume 30 tons per capita of resource each year, which is fairly a big amount if you compare to the Netherlands and Poland, for example. But we also saw that we could triple that circularity rate to go to 9.8% with 6 scenarios. You have them at the right, and 37 strategy to apply. And if we go to that rate, we could reduce significantly our consumption of resource. So that's really what we're looking for, increasing our circularity rate, but also reducing consumption of resource. We have many strengths in Quebec, so we are planning to build on them. We have a great ecosystem of committed stakeholders, and there's a lot of people from Quebec, the province of Quebec today, so I'm really happy to see all of them. So from all sectors, from research, government, finance, association also. So they've been engaged with a few works for a few years now, so they're really committed. We also have the ability to take into account local needs and realities, and we have for a few years now have had in place territorial synergies in many regions. So this is really something we plan to build on in the future. And we talked about, so the panelists before us talked about multiple levels to move forwards. So we use multiple and complementary levers at the government level. So policies is one of them, funding also, but also support and tools. So RECYC-Québec is a government agency with a broad mandate, and we offer funding for projects aimed at reduction, recycling, reuse also. And we provide support and tools. For instance, we develop toolkits for municipalities, for local government to make their own roadmap to circularity. So we really want to continue building on all those strengths. What's next for us? So we're planning on updating our circularity metric in 2025. And we want to go further on certain themes, mainly as how circular economy can be a lever both for the fight against climate change, but also biodiversity loss. We want to dive deeper also into the built environment and job, how the circular economy transition needs also changes into jobs, and what would be the job opportunities in the futures. And the last thing also that is about to come out, I would say in the next weeks or months, is the government roadmap. So we have in Quebec the Sustainable Development Strategy. This one is for 2023-2028, and it's a roadmap for the ministries and organizations in the government of Quebec to make sure that they include circular economy into their own policies, strategies, action plans. So instead of doing something, I would say, apart from all we do across government, we wanted to make sure that it is included in all we do. So our own actions, but also our public-facing strategies and action plans. So that will come out. And if you want to stay in touch and be kept in the loop about what's going out in Quebec. We have our own Assises québécoises de l'économie circulaire. It's going to be our third event of that sort. It's going to be November 21st this year in Montreal, so be sure to check it out if it's something you're interested in. Thank you. So for the next presenter, I'll ask Jason Robinson from Evoco. I'm sorry. So I'll leave it to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, friends. My name is Jason Robinson, and I'm the co-founder of Evoco. We're a Toronto-based company. The other co-founder is sitting right there at the table. Firstly, I want to say it's great to see the diversity of this panel and female leaders really taking charge in this new sector, this new industry. Evoco is really challenging the material value chain that you are indoctrinated in today. So chemistry is the building blocks of all of our materials. So everything you're sitting on, putting your plates on today, what you drove in on, what you slept on last night, what you're wearing, what you're running in, is made from fossil fuels, or more specifically, petrochemistry. That building block comes from a non-renewable source and is used to make everything that we use in our everyday lives, therefore carbonizing our lives and toxifying our lives. Evoco challenges for this from the root by utilizing plants as the building blocks for all of our chemistry, so we can make materials that are more sustainable, more renewable, carbon reducing, and detoxifying. I've put up a slide here about one specific sector, which is the fashion industry, which we kind of really indoctrinate ourselves into every day. Significant amount of carbon, in fact, multiple gigatons, and this probably is fairly underestimated in terms of the impact of carbon on the fashion and footwear sector in our material value chain. That means every running shoe you wear, and even clothes you wear, is carbonizing our environment, adding carbon and adding toxification to our environment. On top of that, there's a significant waste issue in terms of disposal of these products, hyper-consumerism of purchasing these products, and it's really impacting our daily lives. What we try to do at Evoco is look at carbon from the source being renewable. That is, utilizing a plant to make chemistry building blocks. That plant can be used to make polymers, and a variety of different polymers for plastics, foams, coatings, adhesives. On top of that, use that to create a variety of different materials that we use in our everyday lives. At the end of that life, those materials can biodegrade and minimize the impact at the end of life by reducing waste and removing that toxicity from these materials. And this creates a cycle. It creates a cycle of product circularity, but also carbon circularity. And we sometimes focus too much on recycling as the only way of adding circularity to our products. We believe that adding circularity to this industry or multiple industries in our material value chain is by going to the root source and by removing oil from our everyday lives. The carbon impact is significant. So our first generation materials, which you can go out and buy today in a variety of different shoes, actually reduces your carbon footprint by anywhere between 5 to 10 times. Specifically, by utilizing plants, we can reduce our carbon impact and improve our life cycle analysis with the materials that you're using. On top of that, as we continue to improve our innovations, we have over 20 patents based on plant-based chemistry and materials and products. We continually improve that innovation to decrease and improve the impact of these materials on our daily lives. So you can go out and buy these products today. We are in products like Vans, Timberland, Keen, large global brands that are actually utilizing plant-based materials in footwear components. So we built this industry to be able, or we built this company in order to be able to scale. And with scale comes impact. So if we can only make 10,000 units, we're not really impacting a carbon reduction within a specific industry. Evoco designed its technology to be impactful to hundreds of millions of units. And if we make something like 25 billion pairs of shoes per year and growing, we want to be able to make a sizable impact within that industry. But our focus is not just on footwear. Our focus is to drive this technology platform into multiple verticals. For example, we can have a plant-based leather technology that we can use for footwear, fashion, and furniture. But our foam technology can also be applied to the automotive industry and even the mattresses you sleep on. So we can really impact your daily lives through your purchasing power for you, the consumer, to come to us or come to the partners we work with and buy better product that is carbon reducing, detoxified, and allows us to really understand the impact of your purchasing power. I'll end by comments really is, recycling is not a bad thing. Recycling is important and we should include that in our daily lives. But we have to go beyond that narrative now. We're not going to recycle our way out of this problem. We have to look at the root source of the materials we're using in our everyday lives. Oil, fossil fuels, is a significant addition to carbon footprint and toxicity and waste in our daily lives. If we can start to purchase better, and we can start to move beyond the narrative that recycling is going to save our planet, then we can start to look at how we, as consumers, as colleagues, start to better our lives through the purchasing power of what we're doing. We're focusing on the consumer goods industry because we can bring this message to the people to start to look at how you're purchasing, okay? So brands today are starting to add carbon footprint to their products. That's a good start, But it's about you guys preferentially buying better products and understanding what you're buying and the means to which you're buying with these types of materials. So I'd like to end on plants versus oil is a significant discussion to be had over the coming years to improve our material value chain in our daily lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason. I do agree with you. It's so much more than recycling. So our next presenter is Jessica Regan from Food Mesh.
Hello, everybody. Thanks so much. It's great to be here. So before I start with what we're working on, I think it's really important to talk about the why. So many people are very familiar with the food waste problem, but for those who aren't, I'll just provide a really quick context. So depending on what study you see, between a third and over half of the food that's grown in Canada is either lost or wasted along the supply chain. This is at a time where 1 in 7 people in Canada are facing food insecurity. That number is also increasing, where we're seeing reports of 1 in 5 and 1 in 6. And of course, the emissions, the contribution to climate change is fairly significant. Between 8 to 10% of food waste is contributing to our greenhouse gases. This is discounting also the economic impact, which $30 to $50 billion of lost revenue from our food waste. So I think we can all agree that this is a really absurd problem. It is something that can be tackled, but we're not really here to talk about the problem. We're here to talk about the solutions and the art of the possible. And that is very possible, but it's going to take a multi-pronged approach. And in order to move from a linear to a circular. And it does take a bunch of different approaches. First, starting with diversion. So diversion, of course, is not the end-all solution. It is, in a sense, almost like a Band-Aid. But we have to, the facts are facts. We have hundreds of thousands of data points to suggest that some companies and subsegments of the supply chain, about 40 to 60% of what they do not sell can be rescued. It's consumable. It might not be sellable because of cosmetic, confusing date labels. And only 4% of that loss is actually rescued. So there is an enormous opportunity here to help rescue more of this food and help it reroute to other channels. Then, of course, we need better data. Everybody says we need better data. Why do we need better data? We need to diagnose the problem. You talk to a lot of businesses, they will say they do not have a waste problem. The data is telling a different story. The diagnostics that we're starting to see in the telemetry into some of these businesses are getting so good that we can start to see what's happening at a particular warehouse or department on a specific shift, so that we can start to use that information to start to help those businesses make better decisions about how to prevent, which of course is the golden, the pillar of sustainability and circularity. We really need to start to design out waste, but we need to really understand what the problem is that we're dealing with here. And so, as I said, there's an enormous opportunity for a lot of innovation with this problem, and I guess this is where our story comes in. With Food Mesh, we've been around since 2016. And we're a B Corp business. And really what we're doing is we're building a food recovery platform to help connect unsold food to new secondary markets. So, of course, there's a really strong donation ecosystem in Canada and across the world, but that is one stream. Businesses also need to look at alternative models too. Are there ways to valorize or potentially sell? Are there other outlets for the inedible that's not fit for humans? So really what we do is we build tools and services to help businesses and municipalities help basically connect, to coordinate, and to measure that movement of unsold food, to help reduce waste, to feed more, and to create shared value, which is really important. Because as a B Corp, and for those that are familiar with that model, is that it's really about building in circularity and sustainability into all your systems. So your human systems, your financial systems, and really being mindful about not just what you do and why you do it, but how you do it, which is really important. So that's what we do. And the network to date, so we've built a network over 2,000 businesses, charities, farmers, municipalities, all committed to the same goals, shared goals to reduce waste. They all agree with the shared philosophy that food is not waste. Waste only occurs when there's no end user. And so to date, these are just some of the metrics that we record. And right now, the network of about 2,000 businesses and nonprofits and businesses are diverting about 1 million meals a month of rescued equivalent meals per month. That's not including the jobs, the volunteers, and all the other incredible things that are happening through the great work of all of the different contributors to this problem. And I don't really want to talk so much about Food Mesh because we're just one of many. And I really want to talk about what's happening in this space, and it's a good news story. We're just one of many organizations that are stepping up and taking a stand on this problem. We fit in on the technology and services side. There is a lot of nonprofits. I think I read somewhere there's 60,000 nonprofits that are helping local communities rescue that food and feed our food insecure. Farmers, zoos, municipalities, it's a really thriving ecosystem. And this is really important because we do not want a monolithic solution. We need diversity, we need a mosaic. This is a very beautiful thing, but we need more. But unfortunately, it's very difficult for a lot of these organizations to stay in business. We see a lot of them come and go. Unfortunately, a lot of startups, 90% don't pass that 5-year mark. They call it crossing the chasm. And so we really need to support and nurture these startups, these innovation, and to really invest in them and say yes to pilots when a startup comes to you and says, I have this idea, will you try it? Say yes. But then also in the nonprofit sector too, our nonprofits that are doing such beautiful work, they're competing for grant funding to make sure that they can stay in operation so that they can continue to feed the people in their local communities. They're competing for the same dollars, and it's very volatile and unpredictable. So how are we supposed to build a system where there's unpredictability? We need to build a new value system. And if we value this work, we need to put a value on it. The work is not free, and not even for nonprofits. And we really need to start to think about the cost and the benefit of this beautiful work that's happening. Oh, pardon me, how do I go back? So again, Food Mesh as a B Corp, part of our shared value model is we have a specific model where we actually see data as a currency. Data is very important for us, not just to verify scheduled pickups to make sure that somebody actually picked up when they said they were going to build trust into that program. But we also buy those data inputs from the different nonprofits. It's only a few dollars per input, but that adds up. Some of these nonprofits are getting $5,000, $6,000 a month, which helps them pay for their drivers and gives them predictability. But that's only offsetting part of the problem. We need other contributors to help pay for this system that we want to encourage and to lift up. And so I encourage us to really put that value and invest in this into this new system. And progress is happening. We're firsthand experience or testament that it is happening. There's a lot of possibility, a lot of great work, but of course more is needed. It's not happening fast enough. There are businesses, even when we offer it for free, they're still not motivated for change. So I'm a big proponent of the carrot and stick. I think we're kind of there. And so we really need to start with strong leadership at the industry level, making sure that it trickles down to even at the staff level. Money talks. There's some businesses that are incentivizing their staff if they reduce their shrink, if they're being more responsible. I think it'd be very good to start to look at that if you're in industry in a position of leadership, signing up to public pledges and making good on them and getting good data. And then, of course, waste. Waste is way too cheap. It does not include the external costs of the environmental costs. Waste is too cheap. And we need to start to really look at that. It should be economically illogical to throw stuff out, and right now it's more expensive to recover than it is to dispose. So there's a broken system right there. And then also in terms of stewardships, there's 80 stewardship programs in Canada. There's not an organics one. I think we need to start to have a conversation, and I'm very happy to be part of that if anybody is interested. And then, of course, regulations. There's a lot of really great work, municipalities and regional governments doing some really great work. Nova Scotia, Metro, Guelph, the OGs of organic bans, but even Regina, who just announced it. It's really great for any regional government or municipality who doesn't think they can do it because they don't have the local infrastructure. I like to challenge you on that. There's lots of solution providers in every corner of every Canadian community in Canada, and we can help you find that. So just be bold, make the change, and innovation will follow. So that's it. I just thank you so much for your time. And like I said, help us lift up this system so that we can give food a second chance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jessica. So next up is Kayli Dale from Friendlier.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kayli Dale, and I'm the co-founder and CEO at Friendlier, where we're on a mission to simplify the world's transition from single-use to reusable packaging. We're a startup. We're about 3 years old, getting there, but we've been growing very quickly. We're now working with over 200 B2B clients. Last year, we grew very quickly. We grew 500% in 2022, so things are moving. And we've diverted over 500,000 packages from landfill. So we're starting to reach some level of scale that we can demonstrate and grow from there. So in the single-use, or in the packaging industry in general, there's been a lot of talk around single-use. It's been a buzzword, and we've seen, lots of pieces of legislation and regulation come down the pipeline. And there's a number of reasons or drivers for this movement. Consumers are obviously demanding it. We saw what happened with the straw. A lot of countries have been implementing bans similar to what Canada's doing with the single-use plastic ban. But it's also become really expensive for businesses to rely on the linear supply chain because it's so volatile and dependent on the price of raw materials. So we can address all this by creating a truly circular system. At Friendlier, we've really identified 4 fundamentals of reuse that we help our partners work through to build really successful reuse programs. So product design, obviously, you want to maintain the function that we love in single-use products, the stackability, everything that you need out of a package, but still be able to reuse it and identify the point at which creating a more durable product is worth it. So we have to think about the environmental impact of building more durable packages as well, and when it makes sense to do so, when we can hit the number of reuses required to actually create a net positive effect. A big piece of what we do is communication. It seems simple, but driving consumer adoption and changing behavior is really key in building successful reuse programs. And then all of the back-end reverse logistics and sanitation, kind of the dirty job that nobody wants to do, but is super key and critical to get reuse systems to scale. So our system is a fully turnkey system. We work with businesses. We provide reusable packaging at a similar rate to what they would pay for single-use packaging, plugs directly into their supply chain the way they would regularly order packaging, and then we handle the rest. We manage a digital deposit system, very similar to the beer store model, where you're paying a deposit with your meal or whatever you're purchasing, and then getting a deposit back when you return it, except it's all digitized. So you get that deposit back straight through your phone, and we can create a network of businesses that are both participating and drop-off locations. And then we track the products throughout the entire supply chain. So for the businesses we work with, we can provide them with a lot of information, both on their impact, but also on business metrics like consumer insights and other value that they wouldn't normally get from a single-use package. So this is just an example of some of that information that we provide our partners, but really what we're trying to do is not only provide a sustainable alternative, but an alternative that drives more value for the businesses. For the consumers, it's super simple. Most of our partners go 100% to reusable packaging, so every customer is paying a deposit, getting that item, and then from there they can scan the QR code that's on the product, drop it off at any of our participating locations. If it's a university campus, maybe it's just walking over to the right bin. If you got takeout, maybe you bring it to the grocery store next time you go grocery shopping. So the idea is to really drive convenience with density as well. And then from there, they can track their deposits. We have options for them to donate to charity. So really trying to create different incentives for different users. We have a number of partners, some larger organizations that we work with. The Compass Group and Aramark we work with closely for university and college type applications, campuses, commercial buildings, corporate cafeterias. We're in all the Scotiabank head offices now in Ontario, so that's been a recent expansion for us. And then we're also piloting with Loblaw at their locations in Guelph. So the list is constantly growing, and we're always looking for more partners. So if you're interested, come talk to me. But we're really seeing some larger organizations come in here and look seriously at reuse. This is just an example of one case. We worked with Humber College, launched in September. They were our first college campus, and in that first 8 months of their first year, they reused almost 35,000 packages that were diverted from their waste stream. So really significant impact in just one location. When we're looking at reuse, we need to look at the whole life cycle of the product. That helps us determine, what kind of materials we want to use, how durable are we going to make that product, and we need to make sure that we have a net positive, outcome. We can get this product reused enough times. And so for us, we've, looked at that comparably to other single-use products of different materials, and we can compare that to see, what the best packaging product is for the specific application. Some of the challenges that we face with scaling this, industry adoption is the biggest thing. We're targeting businesses, so we need businesses to really step up and drive that change. For us, we're basically forcing consumer adoption by working with businesses to replace all of their packaging, and we've found, comparably, we've done both, where we offer the option and we don't. And we've seen that when you don't, the communication is so much easier, it's so much simpler. We see higher return rates, which might be counterintuitive, but it's because it's such an easier message to get across to the users. The local infrastructure is what we're relying on. So we do local sanitation and logistics. We do all of our own processing. We do that in Guelph and Ottawa, so we service all of Ontario right now. But it is important to us to maintain that locality as we scale so that we can minimize emissions and maximize the environmental impact that we're making. And then funding to scale, of course, both from government but also industry. We can work together with partners to help set up that infrastructure, help get the funding in place to be able to do this everywhere. That's everything from me. Our tagline is friendlier because the planet isn't single use.
Thank you, Kayli. So our next presenter is Lindsay Colley from Canadian Tire.
Okay, hi everyone. So happy to be here. Obviously, Canadian Tire, I think we're approaching this session a little differently than some of the previous people that I've spoken to. I'm very happy to be on this panel. I actually thought it would be helpful for the room for you to all hear sort of how we think about circularity at Canadian Tire and sort of like where we are in that journey. So, Canadian Tire has had a long history of philanthropy for many, many decades, have been really working on reducing environmental impacts throughout all of our operations, including in our products and packaging, probably for the last 10 or 15 years, sort of like more directly. Last year, 2 years ago, I guess, we really started to pull everything together into an overall integrated enterprise-wide ESG strategy. So some of you may be aware, Canadian Tire is actually a very diverse company. So while there's the Canadian Tire brand, we also own many other retail banners. So Marks, Sport Check, Pro Hockey Life, Party City. We have a REIT, so we have a giant real estate portfolio, about 300 gas stations. We also have a bank. And in addition, with respect to all the products that we sell in all of our stores, approximately 35% of the products we sell are actually our own owned brands. So while we sell, of course, Nike and Sport Check stores, for example, we do have over 100 owned brands that we design and manufacture ourselves as well. So we're both a retailer as well as a consumer brands company. So it's quite diverse. So over the last couple of years, we've really been focused on pulling it all together in one cohesive enterprise-wide ESG strategy. And that's a lot of the work that I lead at Canadian Tire. So you'll see in the environment column there, I think if I do this, that's where circularity sits, right next to climate change. Our two big priority areas of focus are around climate change and circularity. So I wanted to show you how we think about circularity at Canadian Tire, and this is pretty brand new. While there's been a ton of work being done in our merch, our product design, and all other teams across all those multiple banners that I just spoke about, and others that I didn't mention, it's sort of just been done in pockets based on individual leaders, individual passion, where vendors have come to approach us. So lots of work has been happening, but it's been somewhat disjointed. We've been really focused this year on how do we pull it all together so that we have one sort of enterprise-wide vision and goal for how we want to think about circularity. And this is both because we're both a retailer and a consumer brands company, It's both at a sort of product level, but also as like a business model level. We are fully cognizant that we are a big participant in the linear consumption model. So from a business standpoint, how do we move that towards circularity? But also from a very sort of more micro standpoint, each piece of packaging in each product, how do we move that to become more sustainable as well? So we're trying to looking at both things together. And so this is somewhat of a simple framework we have put together in order for us to help us organize, I guess, internally, all the different activities and how they all ladder up to each other and how they might be reinforcing. So there's 6 major streams. They're pretty self-evident. I won't get into all of them. But you might be wondering why I say 6 when there's like 5 slices of pie. So of course, like design and procurement, fairly self-evident. Influencing choice is a really big piece. So we have a really huge sort of marketing function and a relationship with our consumers and communities with our brand. So how can we use that to nudge consumers toward more sort of lower impact choices? We talk about extended life, often known as second life, e-commerce. So how do we do that? Repair, rental, resale, maintenance, subscriptions, all those sorts of ideas. And then of course, what do we do sort of at end of life, or what we like to call next use? So those are 5. The middle piece is actually what we're really focused on this year, which is in order to drive all of those pieces, we need to have an understanding of like what makes a product more sustainable. And so that really comes down to data and definitions. And so once again, this is one of these areas where in some parts of the business we have some good data, and other parts of the business we have less good data. In order for us to start to do things like set goals in terms of what percentage of our product assortment we want to be sustainable in certain categories, or potentially set goals in terms of what percentage of our revenue comes from the sale of more sustainable products, we need to start really tracking down at the SKU level, sort of what products are sort of considered more or less sustainable, and sort of what are those various attributes. And that includes potentially carbon emissions. And as you can imagine, we have almost 200,000 SKUs. It's a lot of data we're working to collect. So we're sort of like in the beginning journeys there, coming up with those definitions for ourselves, aligning on them internally, and then starting to go out to our vendors to collect some of that information. So hopefully that's helpful for you. In order for us to do this, we have set up an internal circularity steering committee made up of people from all of our different banners and brands, as well as our product design and merchandising teams to sort of drive and lead this work, and that ladders up to our executive ESG council. So I'm already at 5 minutes and 30 seconds. That's why I have a stopwatch here. So I have 1 minute and 30 seconds left. I'll just share with you 1 or 2 examples of some of the things that we are doing, but I won't be able to get through all these slides. So one of the things that we've been most proud of, and we worked with some of you in the room to do this, is a partnership we started in 2021 with funding from Environment and Climate Change Canada and Fashion Takes Action, as well as other partners. And the goal of that pilot was really textile recycling. So a number of people have mentioned a big challenge here in Canada, especially for us as a large sort of retail and consumer brands company, is lack of sort of infrastructure. And so we wanted to try to develop sort of like an end-to-end supply chain for how we could recycle textiles into consumer goods that you could then sell again. So what we were able to do last year is we were able to recycle about almost 1,000 kilograms of polyester clothing, and we were able to turn that into a felt and then turn this into a new consumer product that we were able to sell in our into our Canadian Tire stores. So what you see here in picture number 1 are collection bins at our Sport Chek stores, and then, so we gathered mainly athletic clothing. We worked with Goodwill. You can see that in pictures sort of 2 and 3. They helped to like wash and clean all the materials, sort them so that we pulled out the polyester, take off things like zippers. And then we worked with a company in Quebec that defiberized all of that clothing for us. Then we worked with another company in Quebec who took that material and turned it into a felt. And then we took that back to our product design teams, and we were actually able to turn it into a laundry hamper. So Type A is one of our owned brands. And so when we looked at the felt, we thought, like, what could we do with this? What would make sense? So it's a laundry hamper, and it's actually available in stores right now if you're interested and you want to go touch and feel it. And if you look at it really closely, you'll see flecks of, fluorescent yellow and bright pink, and that comes from some of the athletic clothing that we recycled. Okay, I'm at 7 minutes, so I think I'll stop there. But we do have many examples of, so that top row is things that we're doing in our own brands, where we're working on sort of like, more sustainable products, materials, especially with respect to apparel, reducing water, and making more use of recycled materials. And then, of course, working with a lot of other national brands that are sort of more sustainable and selling them through our store network as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lindsay. So last but not least is Janice Saunders from Collaskins.
So hi, I'm Janice Saunders, CEO of Collaskins. And what we do at Collaskins is we take natural resource byproduct and we make useful, viable products out of it. We concentrate mainly, well, we specialize in the fishing industry of Newfoundland. So I grew up in the fishing industry, and I remember when the cod moratorium hit Newfoundland, and it was devastating. My family was lucky. We were able to pivot from cod to crab and survive, but not a lot of people did. They had to leave home, move away, and a lot never ever came back. I left home after high school, like most kids my age, is what we did. You had to leave to find work or go to school. There was nothing there. After 20 years managing restaurants here in Ontario, actually, I wanted something with purpose. I wanted to make a difference in the world, and I just didn't know how to do it, so I went home to try and find it. I know a lot of restaurants have major waste issues with food, but when it comes to fishing and farming in Newfoundland, it's in a league of its own. You can't compare anything to the waste made in the fishing industry. I met Ben, our founder, and started working from home making pet treats. We upcycled fish waste into pet treats, one ingredient healthy pet treats. I earned a living wage and more time with my kids. We developed a deep understanding of the supply and market problems in the pet companies. We have the resources that they want, and they have the markets that we need. Without secure supply from towns like mine, even the most successful pet brands can't grow fast enough, and they burn a lot of gas trucking frozen byproduct to centralized processing plants. Upcycling the skins, heads, bones, and guts in the community it's harvested from makes sense for everyone, especially the environment. So the seafood first approach has failed to build valuable markets for 60% of the cod, because 60% of a cod is waste, despite exclusive control of the resource for centuries. At Collaskins, we match the cod byproduct with circular, clean technologies to make premium health products for people and pets. We learned to upcycle that 60% into collagen, pet treats, and compost, and we built our markets in only 3 years. Our byproduct first approach to food, founded in circularity, creates more wealth from the fish we're already harvesting without bigger quotas. Our laser focus to invent and own the best available technologies for byproduct results in 10 times more profit from the same amount of fish. I've watched barges full of fish go into the bay back in Newfoundland and just dump it in the ocean. And then the wind would change and everything would get blown back in again. And so plant workers who already process this waste have to go on the beach and clean it up. I've seen it happen many times, and it's a waste. The same healthy proteins, oils, vitamins, and minerals that are found in food are found in the byproduct as well. And the $350 billion pet market can't get enough of it. In a byproduct first fishery, companies with the best tech and most valuable markets create the most wealth from the resource, not companies with the biggest quota. Our byproduct first approach can work in any farming and fishing community. Our strategy transforms the value chain of food into a much more valuable bioingredients industry, one step at a time, earning more profits at each step. Upcycling resources at the source has real, tangible economic benefits. Our bootstrap startup has already diverted 500 tons of food byproducts from landfills, with revenue of $2 million, investing over $1 million into R&D in the past 3 years. Imagine our model, scaled across the entire food manufacturing sector, one where food processors ask, how can we make our byproduct more valuable than the food? We believe the future of food is pharma. but it hasn't been easy. Big retailers control market and access, and these squeeze their distributors and co-packers. Processors have exclusive control over the byproducts. Most people say, why wouldn't they sell you their waste instead of paying to get rid of it? But we know it's not true. Processors want to make the most money for the least amount of risk and effort. Technology owners who make their waste more valuable than the seafood are viewed and treated as a threat to the status quo. And trust me, I know. We've come across this many times trying to do what we're doing. Big Food seems to be using their supply control in the same way that Big Oil used theirs, to slow the change to renewable energies and to control it. Under the status quo, technology owners have two choices: sell out or risk being eaten alive by sharks. Surviving shark attacks has only strengthened our resolve and forged alliances with fishers and workers. Our natural resources have been undervalued and overexploited for too long. We have Fogo, Torngat, and Labrador Shrimp Union. They prove that cooperative fisheries work. The town donates the land, the not-for-profit supplies the building and equipment. Government puts in startup capital, a community-owned quota, and processing license. We license our technologies to the co-op, and the co-op makes and sells its products back to us for our markets. Supply and capacity profits are reinvested into the town to grow the co-op and offset worker incomes in bad seasons. Harvesters and workers earn a bigger piece of the pie, with year-round jobs not relying on EI to survive like many Newfoundlanders do. Towns are paid a royalty by Collaskins for using their resources and invest in services and infrastructure to attract and retain people. The environment wins when we use the whole fish. It gets processed fresh, never frozen, using less energy and water, and doesn't create fuel emissions trucking water weight to centralized plants. There's 80% water weight in frozen byproduct when it's shipped. We process at the site and we remove all of that water weight before we ship it. The seafood gets sold locally and affordably, and outside money flows in from the valuable exports made from the byproducts. More income, better schedules, better work life, and no more turnarounds, bringing about better mental and physical health and relationships. Newfoundlanders, a lot of them rely on fly in and out work. They leave for 2 weeks, come back for a week. It's very hard on families, your mental health, your physical health. It's a very tough way to live. Collaskins has committed itself to helping towns like mine grow and thrive, not just survive. Most important to me, though, is inspiring Newfoundlanders to come home, proving that there's something worth coming back for. When I said people left and never came back, that's true. They come back to retire because there was no work. There was nothing there for them. But we want to change that. My parents and kids are proud of the work we're doing to build a better future for our community. And I feel proud too. I finally found that purpose I've been looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Janice. I think it was a great way to end our presentations. So maybe for the Q&A part of this session, I'll go to Samantha. Is there some questions on the app or in the room?
Let's start with one from the room here, and if you could introduce your name and affiliation and your question. And there's a lot of really great questions coming in through the WOVA app, so please feel free, help us out a little bit and vote them up for those questions that you two have a burning interest and desire to hear an answer to. Are there any questions from the floor to start us off?
People are shy this morning, I think.
Yeah, not enough coffee.
Yeah, not enough coffee.
Got one?
There's one.
I got it. Here we are. Hamish, introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Hamish from Sparks Publishing Group. We're a digital marketing agency, and we're really interested in focusing on the circular economy and helping lift that up. So my question is really, where does marketing fit into each of the different business models, more so on driving consumer adoption? Because I think that's one of the challenges that we hear again and again. So explaining something like the circular economy, something that maybe you can share, whoever wants to take that question.
I can address that. We do a lot of marketing now, less marketing a product, but more about thought leadership in this space. It is a challenge to kind of start to talk about oil in the material value chain that I kind of repeated through my presentation, is that we don't understand the gravity of the situation. I mean, you spent 60, 70 years building infrastructure and supply chains globally based on one feedstock or one raw material. So to disrupt that is not only a challenge from a supply chain perspective, but cost, and so we have to use the consumers first, but also the retailers and brands, and reach messaging based on facts rather than fiction and lobbying from big oil like it does do very well and very effectively, collaboratively as well. We have to, disrupt their messaging, it's not a good bad cop or good guy, bad guy kind of situation, but it is about trying to integrate effective messaging, fact-based messaging, but also appeal to the consumers and the brands and the retailers to kind of adapt new situations, whether it's circularity, in the food business, or anything. Marketing is important because it actually helps reach out to the masses. And so we use social media platforms, white papers, blogs. We do a lot of podcasts and trying to get this message out there. And it starts small and it kind of grows from there. But marketing is a key impact on reaching multiple people in different ways from different sectors. And if we can continue to do that and build upon that, that's going to be a critical factor as we move forward.
Do you want to add something?
I can jump on that too. Yeah, I think I agree 100% with what you said. I think a lot of it is about education to start, and that opens the door for a lot of collaboration as well. We're not necessarily pushing a product. We're trying to educate on an idea or a concept, and it's something that we see a lot in the packaging industry. There's a lot of companies that'll print a green leaf on a package, and now it's supposed to be sustainable for some reason. But it works, and consumers want that product with the green leaf on it, and they think that's the most sustainable thing. So a lot of it is just breaking through, the perception of what the consumer has in terms of sustainability and what is sustainable, to ensure that what they're demanding of the brands, actually aligns with sustainability. Because if, the brands aren't going to move to a solution, even if it is more sustainable, if the consumers don't believe it and don't want it. So more about education, I think, than traditional marketing at this point.
And maybe I can add something, because we're a government agency, so we don't do marketing per se, but we do awareness campaign, and we are looking into what citizens, but also businesses, what are their attitudes or motivations towards doing something, because we can all do something, but we could have different motivations to do that. And we try to incorporate what we found out into our material that we develop, to make sure that people know how to do things and not necessarily what is circular economy. So we try to show examples of what we already do in our daily lives and how we can change some things easily to increase what we do. That's something I think is useful. And all of you talked about data also is a key, and I think marketing is part of it, but also I saw in most of your presentation that data is key to increase change in the business, but also into consumer behaviors. Yeah. Yes.
Let's take one from the WOVA app here. How do we change consumer behavior and mindset?
Education is a big one. We market our products. We're on two different levels of it. We have a product actually in a store, and we also buy the raw materials from processors and farms and things like that. But education is the biggest thing that I find.
Yeah. I think there is a rise of value-based buyers and consumers, but at the end of the day, it has to be cost-effective. It's got to be easy. and it's really got to fit in with people's lives, because the moment you add friction points or costs or barriers, you lose half the audience. And I was just having this conversation about how do you change behavior, because and so for us, advocacy is a really important thing, but showcasing all of the great work and that there's opportunities to just like I said, to do better. But like I said, advocacy and marketing is important, but at the end of the day, it needs to fit in with people's lives, and it has to be seamless and almost like clockwork in order to change that behavior, I find.
Yes.
I can... Ooh. Hello? Does this work? Absolutely. I think education is important, marketing is important, but I'm sure all of you are well aware of all the confusion around sustainability terms and the 7,624 different eco-labels that exist out there, and how, as a consumer, it can be really difficult. And also, I think a little bit like unrealistic for a consumer to be fully educated on, what the most sustainable water pitcher is, or like a table or a jacket you're wearing or a pair of shoes. So while I think the education and marketing side is definitely really important, I do think there's something to be said, and sort of everyone in this room is in this camp about just businesses getting on with it and doing it. So it's just the decision is made at the sort of like structural level, and then the consumer doesn't really have a choice. So it's kind of like what you were saying about your restaurants. That's like the only option available. You're not asking them to pick. That's just what's there, and then so they do it. So I love all the work that's being done in terms of collaboration and sort of like the pre-competitive work that's being done together with others to change the systems. I've seen, I don't know why, in some people's notes, mention of the Canada Plastics Pact. Canadian Tire is involved in that too. We're a family member. So, we're just doing that. We're not going to kind of compete on, our packaging has less plastic, and no, mine has less, and this is a reason to buy. It's just, sort of collectively, we've all agreed this is the way to go. And so we just do it, and then so it's just done. I think there's something there too. And I remember I've seen some research, this would have been at least 10 years ago, that showed that we have this idea that if you educate an individual, their beliefs change, and then their actions change as a result. But what some research has shown is that it actually sometimes happens the opposite way, which is an individual just acts in the way their sort of environment encourages them to act. And then because we don't like to feel inconsistent with our actions, we actually tend to change our beliefs to rationalize how we might be behaving, which I thought was actually really, really fascinating. So I think there is space for both, but I think this idea that we just need to tell them, consumers the truth all the time, or give them the facts and they'll make rational decisions. There are so many other factors I find that play into an actual action, and we certainly see that with Canadian Tire and some of the products people are choosing to buy over others too.
There's also a lot the government has to do with it as well.
Absolutely.
It's different here in Ontario and cities and things like that. In Newfoundland, north of Deer Lake, which is a 4.5-hour drive to the Northern Peninsula, everything is still black bagged. There's no compost, there's no organics, there's no sorting of anything. Everything is black bagged and thrown in a landfill. And that's because there's no facilities for it. There's nothing, no one doing it. And that's what we're trying to do. Change how everything goes to the landfill. Anything organic, we try to bring it in and make something viable and useful for it. But the government needs to actually mandate what to do when it comes to things like that. Because if that's all people do, that's all they're going to do, because there's nothing else to do.
So, thank you. So I think we have, a question.
Everybody, so Alex from Still Good Food in Montreal. So we're a co-packer of food byproducts, trying to reduce food waste as much as possible, working with manufacturing companies. My question is, so there's a bit over 10,000 manufacturing companies, food manufacturing in Canada, but we're talking maybe about 1,000 of companies really involved in upcycling. How do you explain this?
I'll take that one, yeah. Thanks for your question. So, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, what's going to inspire a company to change, right? What are the levers for change? So regulations is a big one. Cost effectiveness. Is there local solutions nearby? So part of our work is At the end of the day, we sit below the waterline. We're not the star player here. It's really about the local players. And so part of our work is building local networks around any participating location. If there's a warehouse, go and find the upcyclers. Like, there's so many invisible actors that are like in your backyard. So it's really about, again, that bold leadership saying, actually, I do recognize that I have a waste problem. I'm going to admit it. Admitting is the first path to solution. So you have to admit that there's something there. You have to have that leadership and that drive. And then, like I said, then you really have to look and get creative. Like, it's not going to be a silver bullet. It's going to be a patchwork solution where there might be sending it to different streams. So I don't know what the single answer is, but really, you've got to start with saying yes and trying to find those local solutions. So, if you said that there's 10,000 and only 1,000 are doing it, like I said, wherever there's a problem, there's an opportunity. There's a huge opportunity just in that segment. And that's just one segment in the entire supply chain. Yeah.
And maybe I can add also, I think in the food sector, collaboration to drive innovation, you mentioned plastic, but I also in the food sector, I think it's going to be a key driver. And I would say government framework or support would be important, and you're one of the business that RECYC-Québec supported in the last year. So we really think that we should, in every provinces, there should be a framework also to drive more circularity in the food sector, for instance. And there's a role for government and also local governments to play in that drive and that process, that transition to circularity.
And if I could just add to that, actually, I think I'm going to be a little bit controversial here. We keep passing the buck, right? It's too expensive. The companies are not providing the right certification or regulation. The companies are taking low-hanging fruit. We shouldn't inundate consumers with enough information or too much information. I think the reality is that it's hard work, right, to address climate change. And companies need to do better. Consumers need to do better. Retailers need to do better. Brands need to do better. We all need to do better, right? So I think what we're going to have to do is have some accountability. And that's going to be data and measurement passed on to the consumer so they have the right to choose what that is. It's also going to be about the consumer perhaps buying something that's a little bit more expensive, that's greener, and maybe buying less, right? And in that type of hyper-consumerism, type of retail space that we have today, that's maybe not everybody's cup of tea. But I think what the reality is like any of this and us on the panel here, there's got to be an accountability to what we're doing and how we're buying, and an education process all the way through. And so we all need to do better to address net zero targets of 1.5 or 2 degrees, and that's down to us.
There's about 4 minutes left. Do we have time for a last question?
I think we can do maybe at least one more from the WOVA app, and there's a couple keen people in the audience, so Perfect. Why don't we try and get through 3 or 4 if we can do really quick answers. Yeah.
Perfect.
So on the WOVA app for our friends at Evoco, are you able to share what plants are being used in your product? How are you managing the demand for bio-based fibers with global food demand? And can you share what types of processing is required to enable biodegradation?
Yeah, those are great questions and obviously complicated, so I'm supposed to keep this short. So I think I'll start with, we're feedstock agnostic. We have a global supply chain, so that means we use a variety of waste materials coming from the pulp and paper industry. We use non-food-based ag crops, but we also incorporate food waste into some of our materials as well. It's a combination thing, so you don't look at one source of material to address one type of problem. We already have that. So we're feedstock agnostic and try to address that. And in terms of competing with the global supply chain, biopolymers account for a fraction of a percentage in land use. So it means any type of agriculture we're using towards utilizing these materials is a fraction of a percent. In biodegradation processing, the best way is to divert it from landfill. Landfill is anaerobic. It takes years and years for these things to degrade, if they degrade at all. So what you want to do is have a value chain / supply chain set up to get materials that are biodegradable, like our materials, into a supply chain or a system that allows it to go back into composting, go back into garden or that sort of system. That is not set up today, but again, we can't always pass the problem on to someone else. Some of that accountability has to us, so we can all have composters in our backyard to start these processes and go from there.
There we go. Hi, my name is Mika. I'm a consultant in circular economy space, and today I have my CPP hat on. What I would like to ask all of you, and I heard a little bit from Kayli at Friendlier, what's currently locking you into place in the linear economy? And I know money is usually the first thing that we say, but putting that aside, money is an enabler. It's not a systemic problem. What is actually preventing you from achieving scale with some of your circular products and ideas?
One word from each of you.
Government regulations for us.
That's a hard question. I'll probably say infrastructure.
I would probably say infrastructure as well.
We're scaling right now, and adoption is happening, so we're growing with adoption, so it's a good thing.
I would say time.
Yeah, either myth of liability to get sued because of finding alternative uses, or just the desire for change, lack of will.
And our last question. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm an economic development officer in Peterborough, so kind of rural. And I have a very question for Jason and Jessica, maybe the young companies here. How can we help you scale or clone yourself? Because going to the other question, it's true, there are too few companies like yours.
Yeah, I think it comes a little bit about bringing your message to the retailers. So the consumer behavior drives retailers, drives brands, drives technology. So it's not something, like I said, we all have to work together. Government regulation, better company management, ESG mandates that actually mean things within companies, stuff like that. But when you look at economic development, sometimes having policies that allows to divert some land use to biopolymers that doesn't affect your food chain and stuff like that could be something that you would look at from a rural perspective. But other than that, I think it's just about being a good citizen to the planet and being a good consumer by doing that.
Okay, and direct, what are your growth pains? Can you grow fast enough your business and in order to actually be more effective and more impactful? That's a very different angle, which I think is very important as well.
Kayli is saying yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely think we can. We're growing very quickly, and there are a number of other companies working on similar problems that are scaling very quickly. I think it is challenging being in the circular economy space, specifically as a startup. It's not a straight tech or software company that the industry traditionally likes to fund, especially in Canada. But I think that companies are doing it. It's just a matter of, I think, from our perspective, industry moving quickly enough to scale with us.
So thank you to all the five of you for a great presentation, great discussion, really inspiring. I hope you liked our session on showcasing success stories. And I'm guessing lunch is next here.
Lunch is served out here in the gala foyer and in the other corner, so people can go out, help themselves, and bring it back into the room here to eat. Thanks very much, everybody. And thank you, Sophie.